Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my first impressions look on the brand new Puma MB.05. So this is Lamelo Ball's 5th signature shoe with Puma, and this shoe actually retails for $130, which is, that kind of sucks because the MB4 was $125, so they just keep upping the price. I mean, $130 is still a pretty good price. As far as the tech goes, it's pretty much the exact same tech that we've been getting in his entire shoe line. Pretty much. Like, I don't know, I guess Lamelo Ball likes a mid-top shoe with a crazy amount of cushion, with terrible court feel, something bulky, you know what I mean? Like, literally his entire shoe line feels exactly the same, and in terms of tech, it's pretty much exactly the same as well. You know, we have like an EM material, and then we have nitrofoam, and then we have a crazy outsole pattern and stuff like that. This pink colorway is really loud. I'm not a huge fan of this colorway, but if you guys do want to cop, I try to leave in the feed link in the description box. If you do choose to get this shoe, it does help me out if you buy it through the feed link in the description box. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support, or the YouTube link will be right over here. But let's get it started right off with the tracciones, right? So for the traction, it's actually not mismatched. In some of his shoes, the actual outsole pattern was mismatched, but in this shoe, it's pretty much the exact same. So we have a little bit of herringbone, right? Like a really chaotic herringbone traction pattern, and then going around that we have a barbed wire, and then here in the heel we have a skull. It says 1 of 1, and it's like one of those pictures where if you flip it around, it's the exact same picture. I forget what it's called, but it's really cool, right? As far as like the design goes, and it says number 1 here. So yeah, how does the traction feel? The traction actually feels really good. There's a really nice hard bite, and I'm pretty impressed, you know what I mean? Usually the Lamelos, the MBs have pretty good traction. His last shoe wasn't the best for me though, but this shoe is feeling pretty nice. Also, this shoe has no squeak, or it's a very quiet squeak, which of course squeak has nothing to do with performance, but I like to have a nice little squeak in my hoop shoes when I play, and I feel like a lot of people do as well. But this one right now, just from my first impressions, it's not super squeaky, it's not super loud, there's just a little bit, and hopefully once I break it in, it just get a little bit squeakier though. But yeah, in terms of bite, it bites really well, and it seems like it's picking up very minimal dust on my wood floors as well, which is of course a very good sign. It doesn't mean it's gonna be good or bad, you know, we have yet to see on the actual basketball court, especially once I break it in, but right now for my first impressions, it seems pretty dang good. And also, as far as the outdoor use goes, it seems really bad though. I mean, the grooves are so thin, the rubber is really soft, so definitely do not play with this shoe on an outdoor court. This will rip off really easily, very quickly, right? And also another little bonus is that they added a little bit of an outsole curvature. You know, there is a little bit of a curve here, like in most of his shoes. Like, it's not like the early Kyrie's, you know, like the Kyrie 2, which started it, you know, the Kyrie 2, 3, and 4, which had a really crazy curve. It's more like the Kyrie 5, 6, and 7, you know, it's a little bit more flat, but it still does allow you to go on the balls of your foot, like on the medial side of your foot, a little bit better, a little bit easier, which does feel very nice. So yeah, the traction feels really good. And now moving on to the heel to toe transition, overall it feels pretty smooth, but it feels kind of weird because it's a really stiff shoe, which I'm not used to right now. You know what I mean? So here in the heel, we have a nice rounded shape, and also the actual midsole is pretty exposed. It's a little bit caged here in the back of the shoe, but it does have a nice bit of compression. So here in the heel, it feels very nice, very smooth, right? That's very typical of his shoe line, right? And then here in the forefoot, we also have a nice curved shape. So just from the shape, it feels smooth. But here in the forefoot, it's actually pretty explosive. You know what I mean? Like, look at that. That's a nice kind of like springy feel. It's not super easy to flex as well, like a lot of Nike shoes, or a lot of shoes nowadays have a very flexible, nimble feel. But also the MB.05 has a crazy amount of torsional support. Like this, like here in the midfoot, it's just rock solid, very stiff, which of course is very good for torsional support if you do need that. So yeah, it feels nice and overall smooth, but has a nice stiff feel here in the midfoot, and here in the forefoot we also have a pretty springy feel. So that feels nice, right? And now moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup, they're using full length nitrofoam. So yeah, they've been using nitrofoam literally, I mean, does Puma have any other cushioning setups? You know what I mean? Obviously with the All Pro Nitro, like the very expensive one, they have a different cushioning setup, but it's like the pro version, all right? So yeah, nitrofoam, you guys already know, it's very freaking heavy. Like, it's very high density. So comparing to like Zoom X, you know, Cushlon, those are very, very lightweight, right? Nitrofoam, like in all the shoes that I've tested, is very, very thick, also very high density, which makes the overall shoe very heavy. However, Nitrofoam is pretty nice because it is soft. It's not super bouncy for me though. It just has a nice soft plush feel. Maybe it's because they're making it really thick, you know what I mean? But anyways, yeah, the core feel is not good, you know, and it's higher up off the ground than the Jordan 40, which is kind of insane. So yeah, in Nike's entire shoe line, you know, like when I was testing this shoe, I was testing a whole bunch of other shoes, especially from Nike, you know, like the Jaw 3, the Sabrina 3, the Jaw 2, the Sabrina 2, you know, and also some other shoes like the Zap 3 as well. And you know, the shoes that have really good core feel are like the Sabrina 3, Sabrina 2, the Jaw 2, right? And then you get a little bit higher up off the ground, then you get the Jaw 3, right? The Jaw 3 is a little bit worse in core feel, but still pretty good. And then the highest up off the ground in terms of core feel was the Jordan 40, and this has the worst core feel in terms of like in Nike's entire basketball shoe lineup in recent memory, you know what I mean? But it's still like not terrible because you get a crazy amount of cushion. But then in comes the MB.05. You know, this shoe, like I put on both of these shoes at the same exact time, you know, and I was actually very surprised because I thought these two would be very similar, but then the MB.05 actually has worse core feel. It's actually higher up off the ground, the entire footbed, you know, in the heel as well as in the forefoot. So yeah, as far as like how the cushion feels, it's really plush though. You know, first of all, the step-in comfort is great because of the insole. The insole is very thick, it's very plush, so the immediate step-in comfort, you know, your foot is right on top of that thick insole, so that feels pretty nice. But then obviously insoles bottom out very quickly, right? So yeah, I do like that, but insole doesn't add too much to the cushion. It's just the immediate step-in comfort. And then underneath that, they actually gave us like a softer foam strip board, you know what I mean? Which I don't think I've seen, but in this shoe line, you know what I mean? But yeah, once you press it in, it does get a little bit stiff. It feels a little bit glued down. It feels like there's something stiff underneath that. So right now, in terms of like underfoot feel, it doesn't feel super soft, especially compared to, you know, the Jordan 40, even the Jaw 3, you know what I mean, which has better core feel. So hopefully, you know, it does break in and get a little bit softer. But for right now, I am average weight, so yeah, it's not super easy for me to feel the Nitrofoam underneath my foot right now, right? So that kind of sucks, but again, it'll probably break in very nicely, just like its entire shoe line did for me. And then here in the heel, we do also have a nice bit of heel compression, which does feel nice. And then forefoot gets a little bit more dead, but still kind of plush. So yeah, as far as like the overall cushioning setup, definitely not my favorite because, you know, I'm a guard. And I don't know why Lamelo likes this type of cushioning setup as well. I guess he doesn't, I mean, it's fine, you know, everyone can have their own preferences. But for me, I like to have a very nice like core feel, and this shoe has pretty bad core feel. And then the underfoot cushion isn't as nice, especially compared to a lot of other shoes like the Jordan 40, for it to have this high of, you know, a core feel, you know what I mean? So yeah, right now it feels okay, but you know, we'll have to see on, you know, how it breaks in and stuff like that. And then moving on to the upper. So the upper is actually pretty nice, but I was very surprised at how thin it is, you know what I mean? So they're using a lot of different types of materials for the upper, but here in the toe box and a little bit here into the midfoot, we have this very, very thin screen mesh. Like it's like a very thin plastic screen mesh over another kind of like really thin textile, right? And then we can see some embroidered parts of this upper as well. It's literally just the number 1. And then around the toe box, we have this really, really thin, kind of like almost like a film overlay for, I guess, a little bit better durability, but it doesn't stiffen up the material at all. You know what I mean? So here in the toe box, it's not like the most stiff feeling upper, which I do like, but then it still feels kind of supportive. We'll have to see on how it breaks in. Right now it feels kind of supportive, but you know, once I break it in, it might get a little bit too soft. Like for example, in the Sabrina 3. The Sabrina 3, when I first got it, it was a little bit stiff, especially where the embroidered part was, but I broke it in, literally it took like a day to get really soft, and just, it's a really soft material now, right? So again, we'll have to see on that, but right now it's really thin, has a little bit of structural support and a nice kind of like supportive feel, but definitely durability seems really bad though, you know what I mean? Like it's a really, really thin material, which kind of sucks. And of course, we do have a double strap system, which is literally, it makes up an X first of all, right? And then on the actual strap, we got his logo. It says 1 of 1, and literally for the entire shoes, it says 1 of 1 for the entire shoe. Like you can't go anywhere on the shoe and not see it say 1 of 1. So anyways, it also says not from here, but yeah, it's just, it makes this X shape, and then that's it. I do like how it's a really thin strap and it kind of like stays down. so that it doesn't get in the way when you're trying to tighten the shoe. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't really, with these one-way straps, it doesn't really do too much as far as like improve the lockdown too much in my personal opinion, but that's there, I guess. And then we have a lot of shiny materials in this colorway, kind of like here in the heel. It also has some barbed wire, and also says 1 of 1 and mellow here in the back of the heel as well. And also it says 1 of 1 on the freaking tongue, right? So one thing I love about, Lamelo's shoe line is that they have a very thick plush tongue. Like, it's really cozy, very, very comfortable. So that feels really, really nice, right? Also, it's a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And then also in the midfoot area, we can see that these eyelets, they kind of go down into the actual upper and down into the midsole, and it's like a strap almost, you know what I mean? And that does improve the lockdown and support a little bit here in the midfoot. It actually is a pretty stiff material, especially for structural support compared to the actual forefoot. So I do like that, you know what I mean? It gets a really minimal and flexible soft feel here in the forefoot, and like a really supportive feel here in the midfoot. And then also here in the ankle area, we have a good amount of padding, which of course makes it feel overall pretty bulky, especially since it is a mid-top shoe, but it feels really cozy, very comfortable in the back of the shoe, and very minimal here in the front, right? The only thing I don't like about the upper is it's really thin, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna be very good for durability here in the forefoot, but overall it feels pretty nice, right? It's just, I feel like it's a little bit too bulky for me right now, which is why I actually started to appreciate the Jordan 40 a little bit more, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't feel, this definitely doesn't feel as bulky for the upper, even though the overall weight is heavier for the Jordan 40. So anyways, there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit. So I went up half a size because the MB.04 was really tight for me. I went true to size for the MB.04 and it was way too tight, way too short, especially for the length. So I went up half a size and it fits me really, really well, right? There is a little bit of length, however. So just be careful with that. If you want a really snug fit, then go true to size, but just be careful, it might be a little bit too short. But for me, going up half a size is still pretty nice for the length. And also here in the toe box, it's a slightly snug fit. The material goes over my toes a little bit, and I can still curl my toes up just a tiny bit, but it still has a nice snug feel here in the toe box. But we'll have to see on how it breaks in. Hopefully it's not too, or it doesn't get too roomy, it doesn't stretch out too much, right? As far as the width goes, it's actually slightly narrow as well for me, so no problems with the fit. Actually fits me extremely well. It has a pretty nice snug fit for literally the width, the length, and also here in the toe box, which I do like, I do enjoy. But again, we'll have to see on how it breaks in. So yeah, most people should be fine going up half a size, and you should still have a pretty nice snug fit. And I feel like, again, if you do want a really snug fit, then go true to size, but be careful with that. So there is the fit there. Moving on to the support in lockdown, it feels really nice, you know what I mean? Like, this shoe and his entire shoe line isn't really lacking in support ever. So as far as the lateral containment goes, we can see, I mean, a little bit of the rubber outsole coming up, acting as a sidewall, I guess, right? But here in the heel, we do have the foam as well as a crazy stiff internal TPU heel counter. So and also, like I said, we do have a pretty stiff midfoot area as well, especially with the strap. I guess it adds a little bit to the support, So yeah, lateral containment feels really good. Lateral stability, I mean, it doesn't. First of all, Puma usually never adds an outrigger, so I don't know why they never add an outrigger, especially since you're very high up off the ground with this cushioning setup. So I wish they would add something here, add something sharp, make the outsole protrude out a little bit, But one good thing is that with the outsole curvature, it kind of makes you stay on this side of your foot a little bit more, so I guess that does help a little bit. But it doesn't feel laterally unstable, but it just doesn't feel super stable to me, And overall, lockdown feels really good. And also here in the midfoot feels pretty nice as well. So yeah, support and lockdown feels great. And now moving on to the weight of the shoe. I mean, this shoe doesn't feel super light, but surprisingly, it doesn't feel crazy heavy. You know what I mean? This is definitely lighter than Jordan 40. Yeah, so it comes in at 13.45 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. 13.5 ounces, right? So the average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces, but for modern basketball shoes for the past year or two, the shoes have been getting extremely light. So I feel like the new average is around like 12 ounces, 11.5 to 12 ounces, So 13.5 ounces is pretty heavy. And yeah, this shoe, it feels a little bit heavy. It feels high up off the ground. It definitely feels bulky here in the back of the shoe, but very, very comfortable and cozy. And I guess I do like how it offsets that here in the forefoot, where it has a really minimal feel. But yeah, we'll have to see on how good the traction is, how responsive I feel, but it definitely doesn't feel super minimal, which of course is his entire shoe line. His entire shoe line, MB 1 through 5. None of his shoes have felt super minimal. I guess the only one that's kind of minimal is the MB.02, but it still has a nice bit of padding in, you know, in the ankle area and tongue. So yeah, if you're familiar with that feel and you like that feel, then you'll definitely like the MB.05. It's definitely gonna have like a familiar feel to it once you put on the shoes. So yeah, there is the weight there. Moving on to the aesthetics. Nope, I really dislike it. There's too much going on, like too much. You know, the pattern for the midsole, the upper is just, it's not like a clean design. Like Jordan 40, it's a very clean, simple, like simplistic design, which I do like. You know what I mean? MB.05 is just, it kind of looks, first of all, it looks like a kid shoe to me a little bit, you know, especially with this colorway, but also like what's going on with the upper, you know what I mean? There's too much graphics, you know, too many graphics. So yeah, not a huge fan. I definitely feel like my favorite is probably the MB.01. The MB.01, also the MB.02 looks pretty dang good, but 3, 4, and 5 are, I feel like, a little bit too much for me. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, it feels like an MB. You know what I mean? It feels like a shoe that's for Lamelo. And if you tried any shoes in his entire shoe line, it feels very similar. You know, it has a mid-top design. It restricts your ankle movement just a tiny bit, you know what I mean? But it's not like a high top, especially compared to like the Kobe 3 Pro, which I've been playing in. Bulky, it's a little bit heavy, you know? It has a lot of padding. It's high up off the ground, but the traction feels like it's gonna be pretty good. So yeah, we'll have to see on how responsive it is. And if it is a very responsive shoe, I'll probably enjoy playing in this shoe. But right now I feel like it feels pretty nice, and especially for the price, I feel like it's pretty good so far. So anyways, that about concludes my first impressions look on the MB.05. Again, if you guys do want to cop, I try to leave in the link in the description box, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.